Well,
You're listening to WSBU 88.3 The Buzz, and here at St. Bonaventure University up in the Riley Center. And I'm your news director, Cassidey Kavathas. I'm here with my special guest, David Hilmey. He's the Dean of Arts and Sciences here. And I want to welcome you all on our on-air listeners and online listeners. We're going to be asking David some questions about the Bolder Bonaventure Ignite, Inspire, Invest campaign, which is a largest fundraising campaign in the university's 164-year history. And we're specifically looking at the academic mission and student experience pillar. I'm also taking your questions. Tweet the Buzz's Twitter account at WSBU, tag the account, and use the hashtag of Bolder Bonaventure along with your class year when you post a question. So has this been the first time you're on radio today?
First time today, yes, Cassidey. So normally I'm on by the morning, but this today I decided to go a little later. So thanks so much for having me on. It's
great to be. It's been, I think, about 10 years since I was on the Buzz, so this is really great to be back. Thank you.
Yes. So we're going to be talking a little bit about this main pillar of the campaign, which is kind of fluid. We don't really know. It's a little bit of everything because student experience affects so much here at Bonaventure. So I want to specifically start talking about the Platzman renovations. Platzman Hall is your home base. So can you tell me a little bit about like what Platzman means to you and what it means to a student as a whole?
Sure. So Platzman is one of these buildings that when you think about Bonaventure, I think you can picture that building as kind of a symbol of what the academic experience is. In chemistry, I started across the way in De La Roche. And so I had to move over to Platzman Hall when I became dean. And when I did, I was a little nervous. Platzman is not necessarily known for its great experience physically. So I'm like, I went from a great newly renovated building to this building that was in desperate need. So we're really excited about the fact that it's on its way. But to me, the Platzman experience is the total student experience. Every business student's going to go through Swan. Every Jandoli student is going to go through Murphy, and every science student is going to go through Walsh. The difference for Platzman is every student goes through Platzman Hall. And they do so for a variety of classes, but they really go through the mission. The mission of the institution is really Catholic, Franciscan, liberal arts. And those are the pieces that you're really hitting on when you're sitting in a class in Platzman Hall. And I think that's what we want to do is provide that experience, but match the education that's occurring in this building with the aesthetic, with how it looks, how it feels. And the enthusiasm, it should be outward, not just what's going on between student and faculty member.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Platzman has kind of been everyone's home base. Specifically, if you think of the first year experiences down there, HEOP is there, all tutoring services and the Student Success Center is there. So it's basically the center, the core of the academic block, if you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's intentional. We brought student success over to Platzman in, I want to say 2017, 2018. So most students here would not have known that, but that was a pretty recent addition. And we did so because we wanted those types of services available to students right where they take classes. This should be all together. So we're really glad that we have them with us. And the other part to this is, you also have the School of Education in the exact same building, but in what we call the annex. So right down the hall, the School of Ed has a lot of their classes, and then in the basement, they have their faculty offices. So there's renovations planned over there as well.
Could you tell us a little bit about all of the renovations currently being done here in Platzman and like what's projected to happen in the next few years?
Sure. It's a big building, and so there's a lot of work that needs to happen. So, and the other thing too is it's such a large and active building that we're going to need to make sure that we do this stepwise. So the first step was getting the classrooms ready, and the basement of Platzman is where we're going to end up having the majority of our classrooms that now exist on the second and third floor. So we're going to be opening, work is going on right now. If you have class in Plasman Hall, you know that there's work going on in Plasman Hall. If, jackhammering and banging and all sorts of stuff going in and out of the doors and down the elevator. That's going on right now, and it's been going on all year. So by the time we get to the fall, the idea is that those rooms will be open and you'll have classes down in that basement. Once we hit the summer of this year, we're going to be moving into the phase of starting to renovate the second and the third floor. So those floors will end up closing off for next year. So we really won't have access to those spaces. And those will end up turning into faculty offices. There'll be some additional classrooms. And there's also going to be a large open space that looks out onto campus. So, thinking about, was it that southwest side? If you're looking out onto the campus from where you are, there's going to be a big, giant open space where students are going to be able to sit, work together, study together. That's all going to be part of the big renovation. We're hoping that that's all up and running by fall of 24.
Yeah, that view, just looking out at the Riley Center, will be a great place to study. It kind of reminds me of how the library kind of looks out towards the athletic fields.
Imagine if you're in class right now and how you hate looking out there because you're like, oh, there's so many things I'd rather be at right now, right? But now you can look out while you're just relaxing. That's what we want. We want people to be looking out and enjoying that view instead of longing for what might be out there.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of touching on that open collaborative space, why do you think it's important to have a space like that in such an academically based building?
I think what we're starting to see, and this has been going on for a while, is that the education that we want our students to have is not, and it hasn't been like this for a while, but Plasman hasn't been updated in a while. We want the academic and educational experience to be more than just a classroom. Classroom is where a lot of the learning happens, but that's not where all of it happens. So, you could be in another building and that there's study spaces around. There are different rooms that you can go into. There's open areas where you can sit down and relax. We want students to feel comfortable to just hang out in Plasman Hall. Mainly just because if there's a comfort level, you're going to be more comfortable maybe in your classes. We also know you're going to have interactions with faculty. Faculty are going to need to talk to other faculty. We need spaces where you can have more of a organic, casual conversation because learning is going to take place there as well. We want to make sure that there's places where students can gather for group work and potentially even some, external seminars. Gatherings. There's a sterility to a classroom, and that's something that we want to kind of get rid of that myth. We want that classroom to blend into what's going on with the rest of the building.
Yeah, one of the things I love most about Murphy Hall, even though it's a little old, it's getting a renovation too. We talked about that earlier, but I love how close the lounge area is to faculty offices, because I'm one of those students that just walks in and annoys my faculty whenever I have a question. So having that place in Plasman will be a really great opportunity to build a better connection outside of that classroom. So why do you think it's important that these faculty offices are just so adjacent to the classrooms and to gathering spaces compared to where they are now in the basement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll, you speak about Murphy. I talk about, De La Roche. And, I came in, there was a big renovation and Walsh Science Center was built and De La Roche was renovated. And I stepped into a new setup. Excuse me. And my office was literally right outside of a big, giant open study space. And that's exactly what happened. Students would come and they would hang out at these tables right outside of my office. And they would just do work. They'd be working on problems, they'd be studying for tests. And my door would be open. And, you had a few students, they're probably a lot like, a bunch of Cassideys. They're coming in and, hey, I got a question here, or can you help me with this? And that's what we want. We want students to be asking questions about what's going on. And that's what we're planning. That's what we're intentional about with Plasman. We want students to be right near where they're learning, because we know that the faculty are right there. We also know that there are other students might be right there. So if a faculty office is there, and the student, faculty member has office hours, or they're going to be in their office and they're open to this, we want you to have that back and forth, to walk in, talk to a professor, or for a professor to come on out and just hang out and see what's going on, in the lounge, or with a student that they know is in their class. That familiarity breeds a certain level of comfort. And as you get more comfortable, you get more confident. And confidence is a big part of learning. And if you think you can do it, things are going to get better and better. So it really is all about breeding that level of relationship that I think we talk about all the time at Bonaventure.
Yeah, I can speak to that level of confidence. As scary as Dr. Wilkins may look on the outside, the more you talk to him in that kind of casual passing by office setting, the more confident you get to be able to ask those tough questions, ask why you got this marked wrong. So I really think that having that kind of space in most of our academic buildings would be really beneficial to the student learning experience as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a side note, Dr. Wilkins is a teddy bear, right? So you can tell him I said, maybe he's listening, I don't know, but yeah, no, but that's exactly right. And you get to know that's the part that you kind of mentioned there, is you get to know your professors. Part of the joy of being, you talk about being a student at Bonaventure. There's a joy in that you have, because you're creating these, these friends, these relationships that are going to last a lifetime. As faculty, there's also this aspect of building a relationship. Now, it's a little bit different, right? We're here for you for a certain amount of time, but it's one of the joys that I had as a professor, was getting to know students on a slightly different level, because as they start to get to know you, you break down these barriers. And Dr. Wilkins, probably for you, Cassidey, now somebody you can go talk to.
Yes.
But maybe if you didn't have that interaction with him at the beginning, he can seem like a little bit of a scary guy, and maybe that's something that, if he didn't have that, way about him, or if there was a natural segregation of him from the rest of his students, it could just persist. And that's what was happening in Plasman. Did anyone ever say, I just want to go hang out in Plasman basement? That's a cool place to go. If you think that way, we might have to worry about you, but that's not how it's going to be moving forward. Plasman is going to be a place where people are going to want to go and hang out.
Yeah, kind of pivoting a little off of Plasman and more onto the student experience side of this pillar, because Plasman's kind of just one part of this pillar as a whole. How would you define student experience here at Bonaventure?
There's just so many aspects to that. I think student experience, and you're going to have a lot of different areas that you can go here. Student experience could go in ways that really deal with student life, student affairs, intramurals, club sports, all clubs and activities. So you have that aspect. But student life does include a certain level of academics. And so all these things are kind of built together. One thing that we try to be more and more intentional about is finding a connection between the classroom and what you're doing out there, with the rest of your time. I know you guys do a great job of that in Jan Doley, where a lot of the work that you do outside of the classroom kind of builds back and feeds into the academic experience and into your degree or your majors. And we do that in other majors as well. So a lot of times what we want to try and do is, how do we better incorporate with the mission? I'm always looking for ways that we can try and engage the Franciscan Center for Social Concern more. I know they're trying to do the same thing. Same thing would be true for any type of internships on campus. Student work, student research. That's one that I guess I'm a little more passionate about, because when I was an undergrad, nobody really thought about doing research as a student. It was kind of reserved for grad students and that sort of thing. But I did it. And by doing that, it really put me on a track that led me to the career I'm in right now. So We want our students to do a lot of different things so that way they can find what it is that they're passionate about, what they're interested in. And if it's something like student research, maybe they find that they love it and they go in to pursue a doctoral degree or a professional degree. Or maybe they just say, hey, I really don't like this at all. I'd rather you find that out now rather than later. So the student experience kind of, the reason why this is such a fuzzy pillar is because it is supposed to be fuzzy, because everything can fit within that student experience. That doesn't mean we don't have priorities. Plasmid, for example, right? I mean, there's things that are going to make the student experience better, but there are so many opportunities. There's so many things that could enhance a student's experience. And we want to keep that open. We want to think about possibilities, and we hope we can do that. And you know, Plasmid's a start. I think more integration of service learning is another way to go. Building internship opportunities, paid internship opportunities for students. These are things that are going to help students be able to achieve their goals and do it in a way that really fits with their, you know, career at Bonaventure and beyond.
Yeah, I spoke with a few other people at the university, specifically Chris Brown. He described student experience as anything a student is doing on campus, that's part of their experience. And that could mean in the residence halls, watching the Bills game, in the dining hall, and you're eating a burger. Anything that you do here kind of is your experience. And maybe that is one of the big reasons why the pillar is so fluid, fuzzy. But one thing that directly affects the student experience is if they can even get here. And that is where scholarships and that kind of part of our pillar comes into fruition. Yeah. What do you think why it's so important to have those kind of opportunities to give more scholarships to students or endow a scholarship so that we can have more people join this community?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so you're right. Student experience is literally everything. So yeah, I mean, we want our students to have blazing fast internet for their video games, but there are other things that we're also considering too, right? And I think when we're talking about student experience and bringing students here, scholarships are becoming much, much more important. And it's not to say that they never were. I mean, they're important for students who are here today. They were important for 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But we see is that the continuing cost of higher education, it doesn't slow down and it's not going down. And as I sat last year as the acting vice president for academic affairs, and that was a challenging position because you could see all of the things that go into that student experience. It's not just about faculty and classrooms. It's about student life. It's about student success. It's about counseling. It's about all these different fields. That takes a lot to keep that running. So the cost of higher ed continues to grow. But we know that family incomes and the ability to support students to go to college gets tougher and tougher and tougher. And so what we're seeing is an increased gap between what students can pay and how much education costs. So anybody or anyone in a position to donate, you know, to the university, we're really looking at scholarships as a major piece because we're going to be able to take that gap and shrink it to the point where people are not only going to consider Bonaventure, but come to Bonaventure and bring something to us. I think a lot of times we talk about what Bonaventure can do for students, and we forget that we're better because of the type of student that come to us. We're better because Cassidey's here. We're better because a lot of other students who are here make this a more vibrant, a more awesome place to be. It's the people that matter, and the broader range of people that we can bring here, the more diverse, the more robust, I think the more fun of an atmosphere and a group of people we have. So we have to make sure we're bringing in as many and as different type of people as possible and giving those that don't have the financial need the opportunity to come to Bonaventure.
Yeah, I'm actually here on a scholarship. I probably wouldn't be here if I wasn't on a scholarship. Well, I was thinking about my junior year, looking at colleges, looking at which ones I would go to, and the money, as much as you may love a school and you really want to go there, money kind of talks. So having those opportunities to really give back to the university in a way that you can not just work on fixing a building, where you can directly affect a student's experience is so crucial to where higher ed is going now.
Absolutely. I think you're right on there. I think you lose the opportunity to even bring students into the fold because of that, right? I mean, you would have come here, right, if it wasn't for the scholarship. I was at a different point. You know, I didn't even know. I mean, first generation students, they typically don't know what's going on, right? I mean, you have no clue about the process at all. I didn't even look at Bonaventure, and in hindsight, I wish I would have, because it's such a great place here. But I didn't even consider it because I just thought, well, I can't afford it. What we have to do is find a way to make sure that students are aware of Bonaventure. That's number one. But then giving them an opportunity, like you just said, Cassidey. How do we make sure that students feel like this is not out of my reach? I want to go here, but it's not, and it's not out of my reach. And thanks to the people who are providing these scholarships, who are building these endowments, because without them, we would lose these students. And knowing the types of students who we have who came in through scholarship, I can tell you it would be a loss that would be, you know, just unimaginable.
Yeah, kind of jumping off of this into another fluid kind of question. How can this pillar as a whole really prepare Bonaventure for the future that we're going into?
That's a big question. It's a big question. I don't remember that one from the interview. I feel like you're springing this on me right now. I think it's a really good question, because what you're seeing is the stability and the sustainability of Bonaventure depends on the students who are here every year. I think a lot of times we think about some sort of future of Bonaventure as being down the road. What's it gonna be like in 25 years? But really, it's about this year and next year, and then next year it's about this year and next year. So by shaping the students and making sure we have robust student populations at Bonaventure this year, we're making sure that we have it for next year. And so you want to have a broad group of students. You want to make sure you have people who are represented from all different parts of this country, the region, ethnic, racial, gender, sexual diversity. We want all these types of people here, because it makes for a much more vibrant story. And we also know that population shift, things change, demographics change, and our country's getting more diverse, our region's getting more diverse. So we want to make sure that we have the ability to attract all of these types of people here to Bonaventure. And I think what that's also going to do is it's going to help the Bonaventure, I'm going to say Bonaventure bubble. It is an overused phrase. All right, I'm going on here right now and I'm saying it, but I'm going to use it. I want that bubble to expand to a point where people feel included by it. The bubble's a cool thing. That community we have, that feel, that special sauce, that's an awesome thing. I've never experienced it anywhere else. But we want people to feel like they can step right into it, no matter who you are. I think it's easy for a lot of people to step right into it. I think it's harder for others. So the more opportunities we give, the more ability we can give somebody from a lower income background or somebody from a different perspective to come to Bonaventure because of those scholarships. I think what you're going to do is you're going to expand the type of bubble we have, and that's going to be a better situation in the future when we're struggling to make sure that we have the students. The broader range of students we have, the better.
Yeah, and that's what's so special about Bonaventure is we have that ability to be such a welcoming community from day one. As we're kind of wrapping up here, is there anything that I didn't really touch on that you were like, Cassidey, I have to talk about this?
I have to talk about this. That's a good question. Not in terms, I was going to say there's things I want to talk about, but not in terms of the pillar. But it definitely, I think you've hit on a lot of really good points. You know, we talk a lot about academics. The mission of the institution really is, and I'm going to say this because it's a cliche, but it's an important cliche for us. Like, no knowledge without love. We value that. We think it's important. We live by it. and it's not just lip service. And what we want to see is that the academic buildings have the same level of care that we have for each other, because if we care for what we have here, we care for each other, you have a better experience. So we're hoping that Plasman Hall matches the experience that a student has inside of it, just like it does, you know, in some other buildings that we've recently renovated. And any other student experience, any other scholarship or endowment opportunity. We want to make sure that students are given that same experience, because we think that a world with more Bonnies is a better world.
Yeah, and I saw some pictures of what Plasman's going to look like, and don't you worry, it's going to be gorgeous.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
So I'd like to thank David for coming on my show, the Dean of Arts and Sciences here. And now I want to shift a little and tell you a little bit about what's coming next in this interview series about the Bolder Bonaventure campaign. Next Friday, February 24th, the Friday heading into midterm break, I will be up here at 12:30 p.m. with Alice Miller Nation, the director of the Franciscan Center for Social Concern, and Father Stephen, who's the interim university chaplain. We'll be talking about the Franciscan mission and ministries and how that pillar is really feeding into the overall arching way to benefit Bonaventure. And then after that, on March 10th, coming back out of midterm break, I will have Alan Riddle, the director of annual giving, to talk a little bit more about those scholarships and about the Bonaventure Fund. I know if you're listening, you probably have gotten a call from the Bonaventure Fund. So we'll be talking a little bit about how that benefits students and benefits the university as a whole. So I'd like to thank you for tuning in to Bona News Now on WSBU 88.3 The Buzz, and I hope you have a great day.